That's such a great question. How are we creating and sustaining our vision and mission as a school in these unprecedented times? It's been something that I have had to do a fair amount of reflection on, especially at Ruby Bridges, where we were really faced with an somewhat overwhelming start in opening a brand new school while also opening a brand new school in a virtual learning setting. So I'm sharing right now our school mission here on the screen, and one of our kindergarten learners is showing off his new Ruby Bridges backpack that has our school motto: I am a learner, I am a leader, I belong here. Our team met prior to the school year starting, and I think one of the main ways that we've been able to sustain our vision is really by reminding ourselves that we need to keep the main thing the main thing. And ultimately, our job as educators and as teachers and leaders within our new school community is to ensure that our students and families felt our level of excitement and commitment to the mission of the school, and that we were really focused on using this as an opportunity to build the foundation for the next 10, 15, 20 years as an elementary school. One of the things I shared with my staff early on is that truly our job right now is to make sure that our mission remains the same and that we are incrementally moving and collaborating together to figure out how to lift that mission off the page in this changing learning environment. We talked a lot prior to our first day of school about how we could assess our progress in opening the school by thinking about how we had found opportunities to ensure that each one of our students had an experience that led them to believe in our motto. That was really, I think, grounding for all of us to kind of do an inventory and think about the things we were planning for students and families, to think about how we can make sure each one of the things that happens for each student reflects that commitment to inclusivity. One example of that that I'm really proud of is that our staff collaborated together prior to the school year starting and put together welcome kits. So the little backpack that you see there in the picture contains a variety of things from our kindergarten team. And right from day one, students received an inclusive welcome kit to kindergarten. Each one of our students received that welcome kit with particular thought process happening between our general education, our special education, our English language learner, teachers, and staff to think about what would make the activities and the plans for our first couple of weeks of school really accessible to each one of our students. There were a variety of accommodations and modifications included in the kits for each one of our students. And for students who had specific special needs that needed to be thought about in preparing these kits, we were able to modify and adjust so that truly each student was able to receive a kit that would work well for them and ensure that they were able to engage in the planned activities to start the school year. As our staff started planning the school year, we reached out to families and let our families know that we were resolute in our commitment to the practices that are shown here on this slide as part of what makes us an IPP demonstration site. So first and foremost, that idea of a master schedule and a flexible service delivery model was something that we remained committed to trying to lift off the page. So early on in our welcome events and communications with families, I talked about how our schedule would be consistent across grade levels, that we would be looking to maximize opportunities for our students to engage with each other and build relationships, and that ultimately we would really measure our level of success around how we were ensuring that students were experiencing belonging and learning alongside their peers in the general education setting. So as we planned our schedule, some of the things that we thought about truly was just how do we make adjustments to our master schedule planning process that we had already begun prior to COVID causing a shutdown, and think through what we wanted to prioritize, because we knew that in a virtual learning setting, we would have some differences in how we needed to approach service delivery and what things we needed to think about to truly create an inclusive learning environment for each one of our students. As we began in our school district, one of the requirements was for our teaching teams to engage in family conferences during the first 3 weeks of school. So our team talked a little bit about how our actions in scheduling and planning these family conferences would really say a lot about our commitment to inclusive practices. We created a school-wide conference schedule. So rather than having our teachers plan conferences independently, we actually started by planning each one of our family conferences with our special services team in mind. So we did an inventory and determined where our students with the highest level of needs, our students with IEPs, and our students that received EL services were located throughout the building, thought about who needed to be at the meetings that we were planning, and then actually did a system level planning process for those meetings. So we were able to create opportunities for our teams to actually meet with families, with all of the people who would be helping to design the inclusive practices schedule for each individual student, and to talk and become aware of what some of the pieces have looked like for families in this virtual learning atmosphere. We also developed a plan as a building to put together similar survey questions that all of our teams would use in talking with students. And we used some of the examples of questions that I've previously used at other schools, just looking at the diversity of a student body and what's important to families and what their needs might be, but then also talked about how gathering consistent information from each one of our families and each one of our students would help us in designing the learning experience. Finally, the last piece that we were able to do was create a family survey that we sent out prior to conferences, which included really looking deeply at what families' experiences were in virtual learning, what some of their basic needs are, and whether those needs were being met, looking at technology and technology issues that they might be having, and having that all really gathered at a system level for our school so that it was accessible to each person who works with that particular student or that particular family. I think those little pieces really accentuated the idea that collectively we are much stronger than we are individually, and that's been something that our team has continually been talking about and reflecting on, and just thinking about how can we maximize our power together to do the very best work that we possibly can for each one of our students. The next piece that I'm going to share is just how we took our 3 main areas of focus as an IPP demonstration site and started to really categorize the steps that we're taking to try to lift this model off the page in the virtual setting. So we know that we want to have our master schedule in place. We know we want to have flexible service delivery model in place. And we know that co-teaching and co-planning and collaborating is the way to not only make that happen, but to make it happen really well for each one of our students. That by no stretch of the imagination is easy work. So this list here that's shown on the screen is the conversation starting point that our teams went through during the month of September. After completing the family conferences and beginning assessment processes and developing our core schedule for the building, our next step really was to talk about what we do as we go forward to ensure that we go forward together. So we were able to implement our building schedule, which I'll share in just a moment. And really our work has been to know our students by name, need, and strength. And that is a continual process that our teams will be engaged in. But to start, we are completing a variety of pre-assessment tasks and opportunities so that we can think about how to prioritize student instruction needs and prioritize small group instruction. So right now, our team is in the process of developing our instructional plan for each student, which includes the small group learning opportunity. We've created those places within our building schedule, and those are firmly scheduled and are scheduled consistently within each one of our grade levels to try to maximize our opportunity for other support and special services team members to join during particular times that are noted for small group instruction. One of the areas of leverage that we're really looking to grow and improve during this upcoming month of October is how we involve the adults that are assigned to a student group in an equitable and collaborative way. We want to increase our student engagement, so really employing universal design for learning strategies and principles in the work that we're doing during learning times, and we want to be focused on improving student learning outcomes. In order to do that, every single one of our team members needs to know what they're doing and why they're doing that in the learning setting, whether that is providing co-teaching or collaboration in a Rove and Assist model as an additional person working during whole group instruction, and kind of thinking about what does that really mean in a virtual learning environment that might be different than what it meant in a brick and mortar school. The other thing that we're really working on right now is how do we prioritize different types of intervention instruction for our students. So our teams have committed at this point to particular staffing model for our small group instruction time, and over the next week to 2 weeks, each one of our classroom teachers and grade levels will be putting together a schedule that really tries to prioritize students having access not only to the general education instruction, but also receiving intervention and small group supports that are tailored to match the needs that we've identified. When our teams met, one of the things that I did as the principal leader was to just talk through and model for staff what it looks like to think about flexible service delivery and what it looks like to think about how to chunk their instructional times within each one of their ELA and math content areas to support the needs of individual students, as well as to ensure that the grouping process and the minutes for grouping matches up and supports our specially designed instruction parameters that we have for certain students within the group. I showed teachers this example of what a classroom scenario might look like, and then what we did was talk through what happens next in an inclusive practices model. How do we consider the needs of our students and then plan for instruction? Our teams then took a look at a sample of how the instructional blocks that we've designed in the virtual learning setting can be tailored to ensure that whole group instruction and small group instruction happens in consistent ways across the week, but also to really start to think about what does it look like for the personnel that's working in my particular classroom during this virtual setting that's been defined. So this is just an example of what teams are working on right now, of how they are looking to identify who's doing what type of grouping intervention work or instruction work across the week. So this example here, teams learned a little bit of terminology around using just GET for general education teachers, teacher and SEP for special education para, and talked about some of the types of instruction that each member of the teaching team might do in a given classroom in a given week. We also just talked about how prioritizing in our midweek planning period that we have, that collaboration for consultation and planning for the upcoming week is really important. And that even though in this particular classroom, as an example, there is a general education teacher and a special education para, in the collaborative time period each week, the entire team, which includes special education teachers, English language learner teachers, as well as the adults that are providing the instruction in the room, will meet together and be really clear about who's planning what aspect of groups and what that check-in point looks like. So that's just one example of what the team is doing to help lift the master scheduling aspect and the flexible service delivery model off the page. I wanted to share one more aspect of what it's looking like to put together a master schedule and a flexible service delivery model that we hope will continue to demonstrate our commitment to our school's mission and our values around inclusive practices. So this screen share here is just showing our school's daily schedule, which we've crafted in a couple ways to try to support families. So this model here that you're looking at just shows the K-5 schedule, and in particular our 4 days a week where the schedule is consistent and exactly the same across each classroom within each grade level. So parents received this information, which breaks down more specifically than some of the things that are happening during larger blocks of time. And this also helps our special services team in the design process for what it looks like to put together small group instruction that aligns not only with general education core access, but also aligns with the OSPI guidelines around supporting our EL learners in a virtual setting, as well as aligns with what our IEP guidelines are for providing specially designed instruction. So each one of our grade levels committed to this consistent schedule, and the schedule really drives all of our work together. We've also thought through then what does that mean for each one of our students, and in particular our students who have IEP goals. As an example, we needed to then take that schedule here and kind of go into another layer. So one of the first things our team did was put together a shared spreadsheet. I have student names hidden here, but you can see that we've got not only their classrooms and their case managers, but a real quick view of the goal areas that their SDI really is aligned to for their IEP, as well as thinking about whether they have additional types of supports in place. This allows us to see opportunities where we see students with similar goal areas or need sets that might represent an opportunity for us to provide supports in similar ways, even across grade levels or across classrooms. Some of our teachers have also gone to the next step with the work, particularly for our students who have the highest level of need in our building, and then designed schedules that are specific to individual students. And one of the ways that we're able to help think about what general education opportunities we've offered students and what other types of opportunities students are having for learning is to really start to categorize and work through the number of minutes that they're working within their general ed context, even in a virtual learning atmosphere. So this student schedule truly is a celebration in a lot of respects. This was a student that we recently had join our brand new school who previously was completely self-contained in a classroom of a pretty small number of students. And in our transition into Ruby Bridges, we were able to meet with the family and talk through what it would look like to provide inclusive practices supports for him. And you can see that not only does he have a variety of things happening within his day, but in this particular case, because our team has prioritized that every single one of our students will start the day working with their general education class and peers and be a part of that community meeting and community building process each morning, that we are then able to align our small group instruction opportunities with the same time period that the general education class is completing their small group learning as well. We've seen that some of our students and families, because they struggle in terms of just engaging via Zoom, we have had to make some adjustments with some of our small groups to make sure that they're truly tailored to support the needs of students with significant need sets. But we have been able to maintain that core general education access for students, that core access to specialists, and also then provide small group individualized instruction and opportunities for closure each day with our students being a part of their classroom community of general education peers as well. So that was a priority for us to lift off the page regardless of what the setting looked like. And for our team, what we know is if we're able to do this with our schedule now, we will only grow that ability to provide students with an inclusive practices learning experience when we are in the brick and mortar full live instruction in the school setting, because the limitations of an online setting certainly are much greater just with respect to the kinds of support and coming alongside students that can happen, with the collaborative opportunities that can happen within the classroom. They are limited in a lot of ways through the virtual learning setting. And so we're really looking forward to seeing how we can use all that we've learned here, as well as just the ground that we're making, and really the groundbreaking work that we're doing with some of our students and families once we're able to transition back to Ruby Bridges. When I think about what it takes to maintain and sustain the work that we're doing at Ruby Bridges in this virtual setting, one of the things that first comes to my mind is that ultimately every single one of our decisions that we make either reflects our values or is in contrast to our values. And much of what's going on right now in terms of where we're doing our instruction, what it looks like in terms of model, is out of our control. We are a part of a system, and we're also living in pandemic times. And so as I have been working with my staff and encouraging my staff, our goal truly is to maintain the will to do the work, and ultimately to use this as an opportunity to build the skills that we need in this setting to ensure that our students continue to have access, and in some respects to provide the very first opportunities for access to learning in a general education environment. Our community, I think, ultimately wants to know that we have thought about what each one of their students needs, and that we're open to the collaboration that it's going to take to try to pull that work off via Zoom and via remote learning environments. And so for me as a principal, I think that one of my main goals is to move out of the way any one of the obstacles or challenges that I do have the ability to control, and to put systems and structures in place that not only allow us to more effectively live into our values and teach into our values as a school community, but also provide a foundation for our school and staff community to use as we go forward. We talked about how at this point in time, we don't know where the end is for virtual learning and what this experience is looking like, but ultimately, if we take the learning that we're doing and the structures and systems that we're putting in place, and we only learn and grow from here. We can only get better from here, and we can only get better at supporting our students. We've also talked a lot as a staff about how we really can't unlearn these opportunities for learning that have already surfaced. If we utilize technology or other methods for really honing our collaboration or honing our ability to provide students with multiple means of engagement or multiple ways to connect in our virtual classroom, I would expect that we will take that information and those experiences, and we will capitalize on them when we get the opportunity to be back in person with each of our students and families. It, to me, feels like a huge opportunity for each one of us to reflect on what is most important, to reflect on how we do keep the main thing, and to ultimately model for our students and families that when we say that each one of us is a learner and a leader and belongs here, that we are committed to ensuring that each one of us has that actual experience on the day-to-day, and that cumulatively that we will build a foundation for our students and our families that will be so strong that as we come back together in person, we will have knit together the beginnings of our Ruby Bridges family. So thanks for checking in and asking some of these questions about our journey as a brand new elementary school opening in a virtual learning setting.